This first day of August, Monday, August 2022. Couple of announcements before we get started. Reminder to everybody to turn off or mute your cell phone or other devices. And secondly, we seem to be having some technical difficulties with regard to not what you're seeing on Biz on the screen here in the courtroom, but with regard to the YouTube. It's apparently only working off the camera in the laptop at this point. So what's being broadcast on YouTube is just my lovely face. So with apologies to everybody, but we have a quorum present. We have a legal meeting. It's just going to look strange after the fact, but everything can be heard. So with that being said, if you would join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance of prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioner Williams, would you lead us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, be with us this day as we do the business of the county. Guide us and direct us in this budget process. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And rain.
And right. Yes. Postscript. Thanks.
Okay, present in the courtroom, Commissioners Wright, Guerin, Parkin, and Williams, and Judge Smith. So we have a legal quorum also present. For the record is County Attorney Gerald Hale, County Treasurer Summer Campbell, and Deputy Clerk Julie Fincher. So with that out of the way, the item 2 on the agenda is review and act on the minutes of July 25th, which are in your package. They got a little long in when the discussion on the EMS station, but I've been through them. Does any of commissioners have any comments, corrections, or amendments?
On the minutes,
Yes, sir.
there's one in there. Jason, you seconded yourself.
Which, oh, I see on number 7. Okay. Motion to approve by Commissioner Williams, seconded by Commissioner Williams. Well, I don't think that happened. Well, that needs to be corrected.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I have it written down, but I didn't bring it.
I think
Yeah.
I did, but I wasn't sure.
Well, we also, we have it on tape. We'll fix that. Anything else? Thank you.
That's all I noticed. That's all I noticed.
Okay, is there a motion for approval of the minutes of July 25th with
I
a
move to
correction
approve
on
as
item
corrected.
7? Okay, we have a
Second.
motion from Commissioner Guerin, second from Commissioner Williams. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The next item on the agenda is audience with individuals. Ms. Fincher, did anyone sign up to speak?
No.
Okay, so we have nothing on item 3. Item 4 is approval of accounts payable. Little bit of aside here. We have a meeting every Monday scheduled in August, although we may cancel some if we don't need them. This was to deal with the budget reviews. The treasurer we're going to list payables on every meeting just in case there are things that need to be addressed. Although the treasurer has said their preference will be they will concentrate upon the second and fourth Mondays. But here we have a list. So with that being said, questions, comments on accounts payable?
On page 3. That should go, that's sorted out precinct 2, that should be precinct 1 for $166.20. That's I being for our building out here, precinct 1. That shouldn't, that's not good.
What's the vendor?
Edge Hardware.
Okay,
Edge Hardware, precinct 2 was billed out precinct 1. supplies.
Okay.
I don't know why you're complaining about that. It's, in general, the county needed to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we're working on a precinct barn out here. We're buying the materials and I have a welder that's doing the welding.
Is this from the storm damage? Any other comments or questions on payables?
I
Okay,
make a motion we approve the account payable.
motion from Commissioner Williams, second from Commissioner Wright. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, the next item, number 4. Consider an act on 901 4th Street. That is commonly known here in the court as the old EMS station. The agenda list declaring it as surplus and act on disposing. Further study on the sale of real estate, we do not have to declare it surplus. That's for personal property. The county can just sell real estate. And that's my interpretation. Do you differ, Mr. Hale?
I haven't looked it up. I don't think there's any harm to it.
Yeah, I agree. There's no harm. To address it in that order, the station was, don't know when it was last used as a filling station. It was purchased by the county in 1997, used as an EMS barn by the county, and then after about 2015 by Hamilton Healthcare, who began having troubles with it as they replaced ambulances and would no longer fit in the bays. And then there were sewage problems and mold problems and water problems, leaking problems, and they abandoned it and moved to a house. And the building has sat vacant ever since. It has been deeded back to the county. If in fact it was ever deeded away from the county, we now have filed a deed from Hamilton Health Care to Mills County. We have filed a resolution of error, which was approved in here last meeting, and the step now is moving toward a sale. So the building is currently unused. County has no use for it that I'm aware of, and the prior tenant has deemed it unusable. So based on those things, I would propose to declare it surplus. Let me make a motion. I move we declare county-owned property at 901 4th Street as surplus.
Judge, for the building beside of it, is that part of the original building that used to be where they kept their medicines and stuff? I think the EMS bought that.
The storage building, was that storage building?
The portable building is on the real estate. It sits there. Yeah. So,
Yeah, if that's not part of the motion, we're gonna.
well, I'm declaring the location surplus would be 901 4th Street. I mean, which is that's the whole lot. Yeah. Well, I mean, what will be, I propose to sell, assuming we get through the motions, would be the real estate.
And I just think some precinct might use that storage building if they need it for storage.
I completely agree.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so we all in favor of declaring a 901 1st Street surplus, 4th Street surplus, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now let's move forward with the disposition. Commissioner Wright raised a good point. There is a portable building located behind the old filling station, which I would describe as other personal property. Commissioner Hale,
No,
Mr. L, do you see a problem with us repurposing and moving the portable building?
I think we need to make it clear what we're selling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, anything. Want to be removed from property.
Okay, so we'll remove. I say that. Does a precinct want that portable building?
What about Guy? Could Guy use it?
Well,
Is it bigger than the one you got now? It is. isn't it?
it is larger now. The one we have now is behind the senior center. So there may be footprint considerations over there. Mr. Burns, are you familiar with what the building we're talking about?
Looked at it once.
Is it larger than the one you use behind the senior center?
Yes.
Would it fit behind the senior center? Okay, fair enough. We do have some storage available in the storage container behind precinct 1 that but we want to be careful with what we do with it because we don't want to damage Christmas lights.
Well, my personal, I don't need it
Okay,
at precinct 4. I don't know where I'd put it or anything like that, so.
Mr. Parkin,
I don't have anywhere to put it.
no real estate.
I don't have
Commissioner
any room to put it. I have room, y'all want to put it on precinct 1, I back
Okay,
up to the, you can use it for courthouse, I mean, I have no problem. We can load it on that plane.
well, if we have a need for it and a place to store it, we'll, as we get into the sale of the property, we will be specific that we are not selling a portable building. So there's no action to be taken at this point. The action that I see we need to take is making a decision on how we just sell the building. As I read the statutes, and there's some odds and ends, but there's 3 basic choices: public auction, sealed bid, and listing with a broker. I've tried to outline those and some of the salient points in your package, as well as the government code sites. I don't know that I have a preference one way or the other. What's the court's thoughts on
The
this?
sealed bid would be a quicker process. I think, if I'm reading it right.
It would, with one exception, Commissioner Guerin, that this, as I read the statutes, the sealed bid requires an appraisal of fair market value and a floor price. So the delay will be, and I don't know what it means, but how long we will need to go order and obtain an appraisal, which I'm perfectly willing to do.
If we
Have,
did,
have the fuel tanks been removed?
yes, probably not.
I don't know if we have a letter stating somewhere, Judge,
I've seen it.
the letter stating that they're free and clear of contaminants.
So we got the PCEQ left.
Yes,
Yes.
that was done prior to the deed to Hamilton Healthcare. We have that letter, and I don't recall off the top of my head. I don't think it was because they were removed. I think it was they were unused for so long and they were tested and found to have no contaminants.
That which one?
I'm sure that's going to be an issue with whoever.
Right.
Status.
Yeah, I mean,
Need to be prepared.
if whether we go with a direct to buyers route or via an appraisal, I'll get that file and it'll be part of the package and obviously will be part of the valuation. But all that was done at the time of the court's conveyance to the hospital district.
If we list it with a relative, it leaves kind of a cord out of it and where they can handle it. I don't know how that would work.
Well,
I was just thinking, let's just go to the courthouse lawn, list it 3 weeks in the newspaper and then do it on the courthouse lawn, be done. I mean, that's pretty easy work. I mean, looks like to me, but I don't.
I would do sealed bid with the minimum appraisal myself. Could you use the appraisal in kids appraise value of it?
You got it. I mean, we've done this before. You basically got 3 options. What to do. Pour it out, you can apply a real back over, have to go over, sell it, you can have a public auction, you can see what it is. You can also back up, you can try to sell it one way, set your parameters or your conditions on your bid and or whatever. If it doesn't turn out the way you want it to go that way, you can back up and redo it. Go another route. You've got lots of options.
You know, we sold the old jail and senior citizen center by public auction. We sold the property behind the jail to the realtor. So we've done two different deals there.
Well, my suggestion, if just in the interest of time and expense, might be to use a public auction with a reserve price equal to the MCAD valuation of the property, which in round numbers is $137,000. If that, you know, when we advertise that, if we don't get our reserve price, then we can either go with option 2 or option 3.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. That'll work.
Well, I mean, I'll make the
You'll make that a
motion.
motion?
Yeah, I move the real property at 901 4th Street, excluding the portable building, be disposed via public auction with a minimum price equal to the MCAD tax valuation. Okay, so motion from Judge Smith, second from Commissioner Wright. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, number 6, and this is a discussion of new EMS station. This, we'll probably have this on every agenda for a while. I know a couple of commissioners and Mr. Burns were out looking at the site with the vendor last week, and things are changing. So, who would like to speak to this?
I guess I could start, Judge.
Go right ahead.
You can get my paperwork back. So we met out there, we've done some measuring, we've done some measuring and then remeasuring and I have an old drawing of the law enforcement center, guys. I mean, y'all may have to get up. I can't hold it and show it, but if you go down Justice Drive by the law enforcement center, we talked about this being the lot. Can y'all see that? That's the back impound yard. This is Justice Drive right here. This is a water line in blue. It goes across the road on that. That culvert and Cement Drive is right here. Between this corner and the other corner of the fence is nearly a 7-foot drop. So we're talking a lot of material that's going to have to be added to get this level. Y'all following what I'm saying? On this back corner over here. And so the footprint of it, of the building, is actually this yellow. And so the original plan was to move this fence just straight to the south. Well, you're going to have flooding problems, and you're going to have to have a retaining wall maybe in 2 different places if you do that. If you turn the building and put it on this side, you have very little construction and pad work. You understand what I'm saying? From the drop off and all that. But you're doing a different configuration on the fence. What they're wanting for the footprint, instead of 35 by 41, God, jump in if I say anything wrong, is roughly 60 by 200. Well, if you do that, you're covering that whole dog leg at the front. If you do it here, you're taking out the back third.
How do you get from the smaller footprint to the larger? That's more than just
Oh,
10
okay.
feet around the slab?
Well, they gotta have 45 foot to pull into the building or to back into the building with the ambulance.
Okay,
So that's 45 plus the 35. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
So we
I do.
need 60.
yeah, okay.
If you, because they gotta have a straight shot to back into it or whatever we're gonna do. I went out and put the elevations. We're only, if we go the long way, we're only off by about 2 foot in places. So the elevation would be different.
So instead of having to fill a 7-foot drop, we'll have to fill a 2-foot.
Yes. And actually in the middle of the impound yard is higher because of the water that's already eroded. This back corner down here by Schuster's, I mean, it tapers off quick. And so this is high in the middle, so you'd have to shave some of it and put it to the front and the back. So you're going to steal some of that material there. If we put a fence, the original thought was just moving it and putting it up at the front and putting a fence straight across. There's a gate over here behind the jail right now that gets into the generator. So you have to put that gate, you have to move it so it makes it move it even further back. So when I was doing the math, if I can get to my page. If my math is correct, you would have to move that fence back. And if you went the fence from east to west, you're taking up 43%. Of the impound yards there, you're going to take a footprint of 43% of the yard to get that new fence up. If you go down the back north to south, you're only going to use 20% of the yard. So you'll use less of the impound yard if you do that. Now, here's the problem. That slope coming off the old jail, you can't use that top, 20% because the slope's so big. So you really, it's kind of misleading on the percentage of that. Precinct 2's road hands come up there when I was looking at it. And we think we figured out between their road hands and my road hands that were there, especially 2 of them that were there, Robbie and Randy were there when we built the jail, is removing that water.
Yeah.
And changing that water, and that would help the law enforcement center who's got a bad drainage problem up there on that hill. Somebody at Mike, have you went up there and worked on it, or Jed?
Yes. It might be the last, I've worked on it once before.
It's the first time I've been in there. It's pretty bad shape.
That's on the one up, I think you did too.
Yeah, we hauled about, 25 loads of material there. They hired Randy Cobb to come up and that slope going
And
in, and it didn't help.
It needs a curb on it. If it had a curb on it, I think it would have helped.
What's good?
No.
I don't know what it was.
We built up material on that side of Schuster's and built it up high, we would bring it back towards the lot.
And it has done that, except for that cement that they poured.
Right.
It's like,
It's not-
yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is have the surveyor back out to set the corners on the slab or on the whole.
Well, I would
Footprint.
set it for the footprint of the building,
Okay.
like he did before. Don't you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. And, but now knowing what, I didn't think it was that much of a fall. I really didn't, guys. But eyes are deceiving out there. If you, next to Schuster's fence, on the outside, the west side of the fence is a manhole. That manhole is in that Johnson grass, it's waist high out there. That is our manhole for the sewer that comes out of the jail. Okay, so we have to open that manhole and that will show us the direction of that sewer line. We do not want to set the building on top of that sewer line at all, is what they're telling us. But it is ours. The city of Goldthwaite will not do anything. They will not come up and help us or anything because that is our sewer line. I didn't know that, but anyway. The water line tap is gonna be across Justice Lane, probably, is where they'll put the meter and come up underneath Justice Lane into the building.
The manhole, you said it sits on Schuster's?
No, it sits next to Schuster's Corner back there, but on our property.
Yeah, because I used to mow that all the time. I'd try to keep that mowed around that manhole. It was on our property.
Yeah. It's on our property, but they could, the city come out there, but they couldn't get the manhole open. They broke 2 shovels or 2 pick handles and stuff like that, trying to get it open. And they said it's just rusted shut, whatever that means. But so the water and the sewer is perfect to wherever we're going to put the building. I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's just aesthetics. I like what we originally had, and Sheriff Hammonds and Judge, put it facing the building, facing Justice Lane, pull in. I like that look of it. If we want to do that, it's just going to be more work for us and more material we're going to have to bring in.
How much do we own on that corner down there at Justice Lane where it turns and it goes back to that manhole in the very back of the property? I know they had some flags up. I looked at it the other day.
Yeah.
There's not much room in it.
We own, where the manhole is? We own all the way to the corner to the.
That is
To the-
correct. I'm talking when you first come down Justice Lane and you make that turn and go back to that manhole in the back. There's some flags out there and it's just about a gate width. That's all it is. I think that's all we
the
own.
water line.
Is it?
I think that's kind of where the water line is. I'm not for sure, but
I just saw those 2 flags and I didn't know if that was a property line or.
There's a water line goes from there straight to 183.
And-
The city puts that
and we own what, 4 acres? I think.
3.8 or something like that.
I think something like that. So it's gonna go straight back to the railroad track. Right there. So we have,
Well, it sounds like we ought to spend, I know it's double spending, but another $300 or so to survey the corners of this and the offsetting savings of not having to do a 8-7 foot grade drop or more than
and
offset there, and then see what it looks like. And then be able to go over with the sheriff where what it does to the potential impound yard fence and make sure everything checks. But it sounds like it'll eat less of the impound yard than the first scheme.
basic IDQ gentleman, Terrell Harris, was here, and he doesn't care which direction we want to go. And we can actually, flip the build, this will stay the same as the building, but we flip everything on the inside, and if the doors were originally on the, on the left side of the building, they can put them on the right, because all that'll change. I don't care what direction we're gonna go, but I think it's gonna end up costing us a little bit more money to go one route than the other.
Well, let's spend the survey cost to look at it, turning it perpendicular to avoid the grade issue, and then come back and revisit it next week.
So my one question, Judge, and I haven't worked with him, Dale, maybe you have too, is what about our engineer that does our subdivisions? Could he meet us up there and look at the flow of the land and the water and stuff? And
I believe
I don't
so.
know him. Do you know him? I mean, can he look at that kind of stuff?
Your surveyor can do elevation. Will be guessing.
Yeah, I think the solution we're looking for is how to best control the erosion that exists on the existing law enforcement center and will likely change or be aggravated by this construction. So maybe looking at the Schuster side of it, behind the law enforcement center before you get to the impound yard, and then maybe again below it.
Yeah.
Do you know the engineers we've been using? Okay, yeah, you've worked. Yeah,
Would he have any knowledge there? Would he?
I can talk to him. I mean, Hosea, he told me it's not a lot of money. His fees unless they went up for $160 windshield time.
yeah, that was for the subdivision. So this is a little different, but on that, he was checking somebody else's work. And here we're asking him for advice.
I don't mind calling him.
I just think what
Yeah,
you're
see what
saying,
you-
Judge, is I just think before we get into
I
bad
agree.
water and erosion problems, if not, we're gonna have to have some retaining walls, I think.
I agree. Okay, so Commissioner Park is going to talk to an engineer who's going to engage. I'll be glad to call the surveyor, but I need him to meet somebody on site that's been out there before, and I need some contact information.
Well, between Jed and I, we can definitely meet. with the guy.
Okay.
So we can,
Okay,
Best case scenario, it's probably not gonna happen. If it came a real good rain, we could go up there and watch it.
yeah, well,
But I ain't count everything. Yeah. Building. So it still wouldn't be true.
okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
that's what I want to discuss. And so I'm glad we got a direction. I just didn't want to jump in
No,
and not be prepared.
that was a good catch and may save us a lot of money in the long run. Okay, considering that number 7, so that number 6 was just discussion. Consider an act to apply, right, okay. Secretary of State specifies write-in fees that are paid on candidates, and they're the same as a regular candidate. And for commissioner race, which is where we had a write-in filed, the fee is $750. So we got that. What's the clerk is looking for a court approval from is where to put the money. Every other type of election fee we get goes to the Secretary of State. Write-ins are different. And her request was that we approve applying the fees from the write-in to her election expenses. That's where she's going to have the expense.
That makes sense.
Julie, is there some more to it that you'd like to add?
No, we just need to know where to put the money.
Well, I move,
It's my understanding that with the right, we have to send that money to the Secretary of State. But we don't, like, they have to turn it into you. I believe.
yeah, they did. They gave me a check. I turned it into the clerk and I don't know what's happened to it since, other than it hasn't bounced.
It
It shouldn't be held for holding until we decide where we're gonna put it. The county gets to keep the money. Tony and I are just deciding whether we put it in miscellaneous income or we can apply it to our elections. To cover other elections.
But it does not go to the state.
Well, I move that the treasurer and clerk be authorized to apply the filing fees from write-in candidates to election expense in the clerk's office.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Judge Smith, second from Commissioner Guerin. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Budget workshop. You've got a notebook. We're gonna, with the entire, first of all, the proposed budget was filed late last week. It was filed with the clerk pursuant to the codes. It is on the county website in the financial transparency page. Each commissioner has it in your notebook. We have arranged or scheduled discussions over 3 different commissioner court sequential meetings. Today, talk about the courthouse departments, with the exception of the clerk and the tax assessor collector. The clerk's out on training. And the non-departmental and community expenses, judicial expenses, and their whatever related special use funds there are. Next week, we're planning law enforcement, which includes the jail. And the following week is precincts, road and bridge, and the clerk and tax assessor collector. So that breaks it up into about 3 equal sized bites. Well, how you guys would, if you'd like to go through this, I mean, I've got what everybody turned in. I've got, maybe I'll just go through it and talk a little bit, and y'all interrupt me if you have comments. Like doing. There we go. Okay, look on, I think it's probably behind one of your first tabs. It's of the printout from the treasurer. It's page 1. That's the revenue budget, and that's what's behind everything. And the key issue there, obviously ad valorem taxes are way up, and that is this is a no new tax budget effectively, so that it's 3.2 million, which was the taxes from last year, plus taxes on the new personal property in the budget. I mean, in the budget on the tax rolls, and that's about $1.6 million. The miscellaneous income line is the one I want to point you to. That's a line we typically have peanuts in each year. There's $130,000 of that. That is just a out of the air number. That is where the treasurer and I would book the sale of the EMS station, assuming it'll occur next budget year. And that's based on the 137,000 MCAD valuation, which with some sub cost of sale, legal survey title, whatever we end up with. So that's kind of an oddball thing on the revenue side. Then just flipping through on the county judge expenses, you can see the expense levels going up. The primary driver, it's about 31,000 more than the year before. And this is largely the benefits that go with having a professional judge as opposed to a volunteer judge. So you've got the retirement and medical is the majority of that. Actually, I think it's all of it. As we go through all of these, the year-to-year comparison in the courthouse is a little difficult. Remember, with the phone system, all the courthouse phones or the phone cost is pulled out of the budget because there's no longer a phone bill. And instead, you'll see a line in non-departmental called telephone and internet. And that's for the voice over IP.
Judge, the only one that catches my eye off the top of my head is the school and training. I don't remember, does it cost more for a new judge to go to school and training?
No, there is the first year training for a new judge is a week versus 3 or 4 days, but
And that works.
TAC reimburses it. So it costs nothing.
Okay. Just double check. We're skipping the district clerk, right?
Yeah, let me get to it. So the county and district clerk, it's called a combo clerk, I've learned. We're going to skip that because we're going to do the clerk and the tax assessor collector on the third review because she's out in training. You got the justice of the peace is the one behind that. That's page 4. And the year over year difference is about $12,000. With the majority of that is the across the board pay increases we talked about in the preliminary budget, which is $1.20 an hour for the hourly employees and $26.25 for the regular ones, for the elected officials. And then the benefits that go with that, but really, and then the phones are coming out. So there's no effective change, I would tell you, in the JP's office. We are continuing to budget, 24,000 on medical examiner. That's the autopsy. So far this year, we're half of that through 9 months, or actually 10 months. But then you saw in today's payable, there's another $3,000. So this is really lumpy and unpredictable. Got the treasurer's department. I think this is page 5. And no effective other, funds coming out, the salary adjustments, and other than that, effectively unchanged. On the same thing on the ag extension office, which is immediately behind it, and need to keep in mind that the administrative position is split between the treasurer and the ag extension office, and half of the salaries and benefits are in each group.
And does, I got a question on that, the extension agent salary, does the state pay part of that, or? It's at 16,508.
Yes, there is a whether it's the state or A&M, not us, pays a primary salary. And it's a little bit like the school district where there's a base salary and then local supplement. The salary line you see there is the local supplement. And
I would say, well, Al Tom's a good guy. He's
yeah,
Working for 16,000.
we bumped the local supplement proportionately to what we're doing for county employees. And that drove a little bit of increase down through the fringe benefits and bumped the stock show budget from, 2,100 to 3,000. Because actually they're almost 2,500 for this year. The attorney expense, this is a little bit complicated one. We've had some discussion in the past. This in the past years through year to date includes the county attorney operations and the district attorney. Going forward, we have split out the district attorney, and it's got its own center. It's 0421, and that's on a different page. And that takes $28,600, which is drug testing. Evidentiary drug testing, plus I guess they call it crime lab, plus the proportional fee, and it's around 18,000 that the county pays for the DA's office, and that's divided between the DA and the assistant DA, I believe, and then some benefit money that goes with that. But they actually get small payments directly from our treasurer, so it's something, or on payroll. So it's something to keep in mind. If you look at our payroll account and it's 47 people or something. Some of these are these partial people. So anyway, that goes out of the budget for next year in the county's attorney's office. And that's why this thing actually goes down. But really you see the increase in the county attorney's expense. And and the related benefits, and that's about it. This is one to watch in future years. We have a bargain with our county attorney because he's absorbing his office expense. So if we were to have a county attorney that didn't have his own law practice outside, we'd be talking courthouse space, staff, supplies, all the stuff that goes in running an office. And Mr. Johnson, that's something to keep in mind if Mr. Hale ever decides not to be county attorney. You get
He's already.
Decide. Yeah, 2 years, he's done. I've heard this
Yeah.
before.
well, I just to warn you.
You got to be in all right.
Here, whatever. You want
Just-
a hot pink or what? Yeah, but it's the thing about 2 years, that person is.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
it could, or it could be tomorrow, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, that's a future budget need that we've been fortunate to have, and it's coming in. Going ahead to courthouse maintenance. I think a couple of things to point out there. The hail damage expense ran into courthouse maintenance this year. So that $200,000 of expense, $204,000 year to date, that was the hail damage repair. It's funded by insurance, but that's in a separate, the revenue somewhere else, that's expense. So that is going way down. What we are budgeting is potentially replacing 2 air conditioning compressors. We have a total of, I believe, 14 or more on this building. We lose 1 to 2 a year at a cost of about $5,000 a piece. We budgeted having to replace 2 in the next budget year. And that's the repairs and maintenance AC. You can see it's budgeted 20,000. Current year budget is 10,000. Let's see what else we got. Veteran service officer. It's really, there's a little extra in the training budget. Craig Wright has recruited a volunteer assistant VSO. That's not a paid position, but it's one that requires training. So there's some training money here. And I would tell you this is money well spent, because that gives us succession, fully trained continuity as Craig either steps out or anything was to ever happen to him. And I would tell the court that the Veteran Service Office is working very smoothly from my perspective. Oh, okay, page 10. I don't know if this is, there's the district attorney's cost for next year. Tax assessor on page 11. Again, that's one we wanted to put off till meeting after next, deal with that and the clerk at the same time. Now on page 12 is the non-departmental expenses. And there's some significant things here I want to point to. The line internet and phones, it's budgeted at, read it, 13,000. That is, now that we're in a, that is assumes we have Frontier turned off, and that's the cost of the voice over IP connections. You can see it was budgeted 58,000 this year. That this year's budget included the conversion. So whether or not we spend all that, that was what we ballparked last year as the cost of the units, the technical support, the network upgrade. It looks like we'll be well under that. But next year it'll be 13, and that offsets all of the phone budgets pulled out of the courthouse departments. But then you see the IT services, which has been zero of 48,750. That's the monthly Goldsmith service, which is around 4,000 a month.
You mean not monthly, you mean yearly.
Well, it's 48 a year, 4,000 a
Yeah,
month.
yes.
Yeah,
I thought you said 48,000.
no, you're right. That'd be a whoa. Miscellaneous expense, you'd see 53,000 down there, which is a significant increase. Tell you that's it includes the Christmas lights, the put up and take down, which plus potential upgrade of the what I call the crown lights, the lights around the roof of the courthouse that we don't put up and take down. Those have been up since we first did it. There's LED technology that looks more weatherproof. And that includes a bid we have for it. So that's, I would tell you, a discretionary. And this is probably a good segue to step back. Remember, we've got additional revenue coming in this year. Some of it we need to build a kitty for because we anticipated running a deficit this year. That replaces it. Some of it, this is one time. So we're trying to put it in infrastructure, replacing some vehicles, plants so that we don't have them to hit us the following year. And do some work on the courthouse and the jail. And this is a component of it. The money's there to do it, doesn't have to get spent, but I did want to address it.
Well, what you're saying is, to make sure I'm clear. This is the
Yes.
Christmas lights part of it's only a one-time expense. It's not gonna be a yearly $53,000.
That's correct. The put up and
Hiring a firm or something.
the put up and take down could be a continuing expense. Guy, although we used their bid on that, which I want to say was somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000. He thinks we can do it cheaper ourselves, that we being he could rent that boom lift for a week on each end for $3,000 or $4,000 and use trustee labor and day labor and do the put up and take down. But that sort of came along in the discussion. So what's in the budget was the third party put up and take down. So there's potential savings there. The biggest chunk of the 53 is non-recurring, one-time crown lights on the courthouse roof.
I was just making sure.
But
Yeah.
our whole budget, just like our budget, whatever is not used during the year
Goes
goes back to the general fund.
Exactly. Yeah. The only place that doesn't apply is in some of the special use funds. The contingency is just that. You can see we had a similar budget this year. We've spent a little bit of it. This year, the money was spent there has been largely some of the fees and going into the subdivision ordinance, as I recall. Don't know what next year might be, but you want to have a kitty, and this is the corporate kitty. Lobbying expenses will be zero again, but by statute, we have to budget this line. And so there it is on the budget, but it's zero. Legal and professional fees, just put in 5,000 because we always seem to have some. You recall we've had a few times we've had to engage outside counsel over personnel issues. We've had with subdivision ordinance and activity, there's going to be some. So it's just a small marker. And building improvement expense, that is this deploying the sale of the EMS building. So remember, we forecast getting revenue of 130. This shows we're going to spend 125 of it. Now, whether that gets spent on the new EMS station, fixing the courthouse, drainage problems on the impound yard, that's why it's sort of in a general category of building improvements. But that's trying to redirect the EMS sales proceeds into some other county building. Next one is page 13. These are the public service expenditures. There are only I'd tell you maybe one significant change here. With it's not big bucks, but we bumped the small fire departments $500 a piece in recognition of fuel. Did not the volunteer fire expense went up. That's not a check the county writes. That's where they have a fuel card and some insurance coverage that we pay for at the Gold Point Fire Department level. And so it tends to be what it is. And so the fuel costs will automatically show up there. But so the budget went up by $1,000. Child Welfare Board's the biggie. We're proposing, they're proposing to asking to go from $500 to $10,000. And that is in the budget. They think they can be proactive with the child welfare problems here in Mills County. And off the top of my head, they're running 6 to 8 kids. So just round it off, call it 10. That's spending $1,000 per kid. If it's really 6 or 8, it's maybe spending $1,200 per kid for everything from school supplies, graduation presents, birthday, Christmas, that type of stuff. We thought I would try those. All the other, the usual big ticket things, the library, the Predators Association are unchanged. The museum, I think there's a small amount of money there. But I'm reading across right. They're big ask, but it's I think it's a little premature. They would like to renovate the second floor of the museum building, which was an old dental office and overflow from the Sailor Hotel. I think it might cost several $100,000. They're way too early in the project to have a number on it or to even put anything in here, but it's one to keep our eye on. I think that if once they flesh it out, they'll be able to get grants for most of it, much of it. They can do some fundraising, and they may be back at some point, but it could easily be 2 years from now for help with some matching money. That's the only large project that even got discussed out of the community organizations. Jason, you're on the Child Welfare Board, Commissioner Williams. Is there anything you would like to add to my explanation?
Well, what the state wants us to do and all the rules and changing that. There's a lot that CPS and that do not fund, but you would think the state should fund, and we're coming to find out that we're not. We went from 11 kids this year down to, we went to 5 and then back up to 8. So there is a clientele that is, I don't know, I don't hate to use the word clientele, but there's some kids in this county that need some help. And the board is, like you said, this is just our first year, but we're, I mean, 3 kids' birthdays and doing some stuff for them. We're already over and trying to get back to school supplies. San Saba spends $4,000 on 5 kids to get them back, get those kids back to school, because even foster parents are not required to buy them back to school stuff. You would think that they would be required, but they're not required. And so, but anyway. That was the quest that the president of the board wrote down and turned in on our budget. And so, we would appreciate anything we get, but we all know that it's a budget, so it's a working process. So whatever the sport wants to do.
Teachers usually,
Huh?
teachers usually play a lot of that too in the class.
They do. And so we're learning, we've got on the board, you know, we've got sport boards and stuff like that. They're like, this is what we pay. Somebody at the school last year paid for all the school supplies. Some bystanders in the community went up and did it, and that helped out a bunch. And so there is we're right now working on several different options of doing a big fundraiser. We were actually planning trying to do it in August, but we're just scared the heat's gonna push so many people away that we're gonna wait, push it back a little bit. So,
I have a question on page 13. What are all these different transfers? It's my question is not knowing.
Sure. It's, each one of those is a fund. So there's road and bridge and law enforcement and stuff like that. You can't overdraw a fund. So you're not supposed to. So when you build a budget for an area, whether it's law enforcement or road and bridge, there's the expenses, and then the money to fund it has to come from somewhere. And so it comes as a transfer. So these are just really backfill numbers. That's the amount of money from the general fund that it takes to get each of those other places to zero, plus or minus a couple $100, or plus a couple $100. We don't minus.
Well,
So
like transfers to road and bridge, they were not there in 1819, not there in 1920. 550,800. I assume that was the road improvement.
yes,
Over time. But then it says expenditures through June, wasn't the 100,000 for the equipment, ain't that out of that?
There's already funds in that fund balance, so I haven't had to touch this transfer yet.
Okay.
That might happen. Today when I do my LinkedIn, but so far I haven't.
And that,
Touched to keep the fund balance. Up.
yeah, I don't,
that's what I, because of that, well, we have spent some money on it.
I think this number is overtime pay,
Well-
taxes and some materials.
in the case of road and bridge, it has a separate tax, the county road and bridge tax. Comes in there as revenue, money goes, and there's also money, I don't know whether it comes in there directly into the precincts from vehicle registration, overweight charges, some other tech stock reimbursement. And then there are expenses, and so then there's a net. Now, the net is often negative. And then you see one transfer coming from general fund to road and bridge, and then going out to from road and bridge. If we look at that week after next, or you can find it your book now, you'll see transfers from road and bridge, I believe, into each precinct, and they're all different amounts.
But the road and bridge this year, even though has been able to keep up with their expenditure.
This number is specific to those additional amounts we added last year as one normal.
We try and minimize the transfers into road and bridge and run it pretty tightly, because road and bridge is a taxing entity. And if it can only use the road and bridge money for road and bridge, basically precinct use. So if we get too much in there, you can't pull it back into the general. So it's only been whatever's the shortfall from the collections.
And I assume that's same thing with the rest of them, the indigent health and everything else.
Except the other items don't have that tax revenue. So there, it's just a transfer to cover the budgeted expense. Now, when Summer, the treasurer administers the transfers, she transfers as needed.
Usually do that. I'll do it at the 15th and then we move them out of pool. But we do it on the door and we're in the negative, we're almost in the negative. We're one side of the table, so once the table is done, I pull the fund balances, and if there's any kind of negative, then I do transfer that. If you're in the problem, you're good.
But if, for instance, in indigent health, if 1 month we don't have any claims, she doesn't make the transfer just because it's in the budget. Yeah, it's what still we need. Ms. Campbell, can you tell me what page the court fund is on? I've gotten lost in my book.
I'm going to start on page 16.
5060. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so flip to page 61. That's the expense part. The court fund is the district court. So you see salaries for court personnel. These, again, like the DA, these are the allocated. There's two court coordinators in the district judge's office. There's a court reporter, and there is an indigent defense coordinator. In general, the allocation for district court to Mills County is 10%. So we have, that's based on relative population, roughly. And it's an easy number to work with. It's been the allocation that's been used the whole time before I came to office. So we haven't revisited it. So the 30,558, for instance, of salaries, that's the allocated salaries across 5 people, which is basically 10% of the cost. So you could also look at the bottom line. So if we're spending that number, Brown County is spending 9 times that number. I'm sure my math's exact. But going down here, what district court expects to be more active this year. We're coming out of COVID, hopefully. So we expect more trials, more jury fees, more indigent defense expense. And all of that is, and this was prepared by the district judge. And that's what you're seeing and why it's going from 140 to 160. Now there's some offsets, and it's way back at the beginning in the revenue budget on fines and fees. We expect those are going up too.
The predator is going way up.
Yeah. That's that would include the county court jury, which we try and we don't have many of those, but we've had, I think, maybe 2 district court jury trials this year. And I think they anticipate that going way up. We have one, for instance, our scheduled public hearing on the budget and the tax rate is August 22nd. And that is a start date of the next jury trial.
Oh, so it's gonna be a busy courthouse.
It will be a busy courthouse, but just show that the tempo is picking up. Ms. Fincher, is there anything you could add to that?
I just know the first office will be closed at least that morning. One of us will be in here with.
Yeah, but I mean,
Report and one of them, 2 of us will be. Okay, so you're in.
Must be figuring on some different telephone and post. 312.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Well, so that postage, they send out all those.
Yeah, the postage is all the jury notices that they expect to do.
Cancel, so that means you're saying they're gonna 5 times?
Well, and that includes like indictments and work, someone has to send out certified out of her office. She was been eating that out of her, just the kind of clerk budget, and so we're doing on the conversation.
You may be right, Commissioner Parkin. Let me check those, because the jury notices are going to come out of the clerk's budget. That's where that'll happen. I think and the phones, that's just, he just carried forward last year, and we're going to have the voice over IP. So I think that and the postage can be scaled back.
And this is the number Tanya requested on Friday. Remember when we discussed about for sending out the certified,
Right, but we're looking at the district court budget.
that's where it's going to come out of, because it's related to district court cases.
Okay, okay, so it is right then.
Yes. And it's also in return coming in on revenue side, because she's going to be charging the $85 fee.
Okay,
And we were running that when this money was in.
okay, thank you.
Fees that she haven't normally been collecting.
Let's address that when we get to the clerk's budget in 2 weeks on this market.
Put a note on that.
Yeah. Look at page 6. This is just informational, page 66, I think it is. This is interest and sinking budget. And just to be aware of it, 485,000. That's the annual principal and interest payments on the law enforcement center bonds.
Is that maxed? Or can it, in future years, can more be paid?
The bonds currently are locked out from prepayment, so we can't pay more now directly on the bonds. That does drop off at some point in the future, not next year, however. There are alternative ways to try and get the debt service down. One's called defeasance, and the other is through actually going out into the market and buying the bonds for the county to do that.
But the bonds are at a set rate,
They're what?
at a set rate.
Yes, the bonds have a 4% coupon fixed. And there is a scheduled annual payment or semi-annual payment. And it's about the same number, it varies a little bit from year to
Basically,
year.
for interest, though, right?
No.
One paid February, that will be this principal and interest, and one paid in August is interest only.
Interest.
There's an annual principal payment. The original amount of the bonds was 5,850,000. No, 6,850,000. And we currently owe 5,000,003 maybe.
When it's paid for, it'll be $11 million. Like around the phone.
I know, mother, what was her name? Can't think of it. Summer's predecessor.
Karina Buster.
Karina. You know, she had questioned it once before because there was a bill we weren't seeing. And then I got that email from her. The amount paid on it has been raised, but it was lower from the start because they still owed money on the courthouse renovation.
Yeah,
And so it did go up, but it's maxed now.
there were 4 years ago, there were 2 bonds outstanding. There was a courthouse renovation bond and the jail bond. And about a year or 2 ago, we retired the courthouse bond. And that left just with one bond.
But the amount we paid on this got to go up some.
It did go
After.
up some. When the jail bonds were negotiated, it looks like the financial planners looked at the debt schedule, the amortization schedule on the courthouse bonds, and came up with a number that was about this. It was lower on the jail bonds until the courthouse bonds paid off. And then it stepped up such that the total amount the county paid stayed about the same. It was a little bit of financial engineering.
Well, in today's market, are we worried about this? Good,
About which?
about these rates and all that. I mean, I know it's fixed, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about it. I think right now, the 10-year treasury, which is sort of a risk-free proxy, the yield market is around 2.7%. So a 4% jail bond is above market. So that means these bonds are trading at a premium. The market discounts things. And so people that are buying these things are not paying par. They're paying 105 or 106 or 103 or paying more than par. Because by paying more for the bond, it dilutes that yield, that 4% coupon, down to something in the 3s or 2s. So that's the reason the county shouldn't take $1 million out of our investment account and go redeem bonds, because we'd end up redeeming about $900,000 of bonds. Rough math. However, if we continue to see interest rates go up, and I think we will, at some point it'll go the other way. And if the market yield goes to 5% or 6%, then a 4% coupon bond is going to trade for a discount. So we could take $1 million from our investment account and go out and retire $1.2 million or $1.1 million of courthouse bonds. That's what I think we should do. And that's part of the logic behind the budget, and leaving some of the surplus windfall revenue in the investment account is so when that happens, the county's got the money to do it. Now it's a little more complicated than that, because our bonds are tax-free. So getting 4% from Mills County is better for you than getting 4% from the federal government, because you're not paying tax. So our 4% bonds are really the equivalent of, if I went out and bought something that yielded maybe 5.7%. But, in a year or two, I think we're going to see an opportunity here. But that's for a future board. I almost talked myself hoarse. I didn't mean for this to be the Judge Smith show, but that's kind of the guts of what's behind the courthouse, except for the clerk and tax assessor, judicial and community non-departmental. I'm glad we talked about some of it as we went. Are there things I missed or skipped over and court wants to talk about? Okay, well then moving on, I want to walk you through the truth in taxation spreadsheet. This was prepared by Appraisal District. It's 8 pages. It'll make your eyes cross, but it's got some interesting facts in it. And by the way, in the assessment and collection agreement, which we have with the Appraisal District, we have delegated, and they have agreed to do the preparation of these forms and the truth in taxation rate. So we have no separate action to take on that. On the first page, the interesting part, line 1, there's the total taxable value of the property in Mills County last year. That's $645 million. And then line 4, there's an adopted tax rate. Now, what you got to realize, it's like 0.7, 0.57, and a whole bunch of numbers. This is just the county. They prepare a separate one of these on Road and Bridge. So I'm just going to go through this to give you an idea how it works and tell you that this isn't the whole picture. Some of it is the whole picture. The tax values, for instance, are the same. If you go over to the next page, it's kind of interesting. Up at the top, taxable value lost because it first qualified for an exemption this year. So there's 5.1 million or 5.2 million disappearing. And the next one, number 11, taxable value lost because it first qualified for ag appraisal. So these are properties that got ag for the first time this year. And there we lose another 2.2 million. So the total of that is 7.4 million of property value dropping off the tax rolls. And then you get down to an adjusted tax roll of 637. I mean, what this is trying to do is work toward the no new revenue, which is to adjust down to property that was on the tax roll last year is on the tax roll this year. Let's see where else we got that's interesting. Line 18, this is this year, 2020 taxable value. 986 million. Okay, first page last year, 645 million. Big change year over year. But then you come down to the next page, look at line 23, taxable value of new improvements and new personal property, 302 million. That is new stuff on the tax roll that wasn't there, that's there this year, was not there last year. And I'll tell you that the majority of that, close to 300 million of it, actually not, it's probably close to 295 million of it, is the pretty wind farm that was largely in place on January 1st, the tax rendition date, and the abatement or the pilot program doesn't start till January of 23. So that number jumps into the tax rolls this year and it's going to jump out next year. So if you back out the new property, then we get down to adjusted, and that's line 23 of 654 million. So that's the thing. You go back and compare to page 1. And last year we were at 645 and adjusted for the new stuff, we're 684. So that's an interesting picture. Then they use that on line 33 to calculate a no new revenue tax rate. And that's the taxes that on the same property would generate the same revenue. And that's 0.47, the bunch of numbers. That again, it's this plus road and bridge. And then there's a whole couple of pages of rate adjustments. The state lets you adjust these numbers for some things. You know, line 34 has to do with criminal justice, and there's no adjustment there. That's if we were holding prisoners for longer than 6 months that should have been at TDC and the state wasn't taking them. You get to adjust. Line 35, that's the change in our indigent care health expense. So that's an adjustment, and it's actually, you can see it's a negative one. Cody and I had a little discussion over that, but that's the way it then on the top of the next page, you have an adjustment for increases in indigent defense, county hospitals, which doesn't apply to us, and defunding municipalities, which didn't apply to us. And you get an adjusted no new revenue tax rate. The adjustments are minor and lost in the rounding. On the next page, on line 42, this is the separate calculation. You always get to charge enough taxes to make your bond payments. And so there's that $485,000 number from the INS budget. There's a calculation below it on page 45 about if we know we need to collect that, we can't just charge a tax to do it because not everybody pays their taxes. And then there's a schedule of what amount of our taxes actually got paid. And you can see over a period of years, it's ranged from 92% to 99.9% or 99.8. And so what the appraisal district used was 99% collection rate. Grossed up, okay, what do we have to charge to 99% of it? Will cover the bond payment and you get a number. And you get to add that number to your no new tax rate or your voter approval tax rate. And then there's the whole next page is, okay, if we had a sales tax, you have to adjust for that. And then the next to the last page is the voter approval. This, remember, voter approval is required if you raise your tax rate by more than 1.35% year over year. But which we've never done since this law's been in effect. And if you don't use that 1.35%, you get to carry the unused increment forward for a rolling period of 3 years. So here's that calculation. And you can see line 67 with rolling forward there's almost 25 basis points of unused tax increment that would would move our voter approval rate under the unused increment theory up to 0.76. And then finally, there's the de minimis calculation. This was designed by the legislature for small counties. It says, you can't ever tell when you're going to wreck the fire truck. You can always do an extra $500,000. And adding $500,000 has an effect on the tax rate, and that would be a de minimis rate of 0.56. And then it's signed by the appraisal district. And we have 2 of these. This one is the county, which includes the bond payments, the debt payments. The road and bridge one does not have the debt payments in it. But where we have 2 taxes administered by one legal entity, which is Mills County, under the direction of one managing body, which is Commissioner's Court, we have to file just one disclosure. So I wanted everybody to see that, understand how it works. And I'm losing my papers. I had invited our chief appraiser to either attend or be available by Zoom in case there were any questions. I don't see her. But I'll be glad if there are any, I'll be glad to try and address them. I've been over it with her, and I have to tell you, I disagree with some of the numbers, but the bottom line answer is close enough, and it is what it is. The last thing on the agenda is consider an act on a proposed tax rate for 2022. And this needs some explanation. There's a notice that is in your package that has a proposed tax rate of 0.6061. That is built off the proposed budget. So remember, the magic word is proposed. This is the proposed tax rate. Then there's calculations from the appraisal district using that form I just discussed, but combining road and bridge and county for what's the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate. And what this shows is the proposed rate is 0.60. I'm just going to talk to 2 digits, although when these are published, they might be 4, 5, or 6 digits. The no new revenue rate is 0.64. So we're proposing a budget that is less than the no new revenue rate. The voter approval rate is 0.63, which is also higher than, remember, it's 0.74 if we want to rely on all the carry forward. But so the proposed budget tax rate is less than the no new revenue rate. It's less than the voter approval rate. I've got a question into the appraisal district. I think this no new revenue rate of 0.64 is not what I come up with. I come up with a 0.61, but in any case, that's their number. And it's more than more than the proposed budget includes. You might ask, why are we being asked to consider approval of a proposed tax rate before we've approved the budget? Here's the explanation. Number one, this is a proposed tax rate. Number two, you've got to, this is silly, but it's the rules. We have to vote on a proposed rate. We have to indicate who votes for it and who votes against it. We have to run it in the newspaper. And then I can't read the fine print. So many days later, 10 or 15 days after the run, you can have a meeting to adopt it. Now, we don't have to have a public hearing because we're lower than all the regulatory rates. Even though it says public hearing, according to the appraisal district, that's a misnomer. If you read the fine print, it's only a notice of a public meeting. So we'll be advertising in the Eagle this week on our meeting on August 22nd, includes a public hearing on the budget. That's a step you have to take. This would set it up to have a public hearing on the tax rate on that day, immediately after the other public hearing. With those public hearings out of the way, the court is clear, doesn't have to, but then the court is able to vote on a budget, which can be different from the proposed budget, but you've got to have the hearing. We can vote on the budget, and then we can vote on the tax rate to fund the budget. So what's on the table is to have a record vote on a proposed tax rate so we can advertise it to have a hearing on the 22nd to be able to vote on the budget and the tax rate. And if that sounds circular, I'm sorry.
The state basically sets a valuation of property. Because we're proposing lower nearly 6 cents.
The state, in my understanding, is the appraisal district fixes the value of the property, and people have the right to appeal and things.
Yeah.
But that sets the value. Now, there are state things going on in the background, but the appraisal district sets the value. The county and the other taxing entities set the tax rate.
But by us lowering it from 68 to 60, people's taxes are still increasing because of the value.
Because of the value, not because of the tax rate.
Yeah, yes, actually, it's a hypothetical value. You're looking at the bottom of the second page. And that need all that stuff, and I don't know why that's not moved into the table. But this shows the average homestead value going from 120 to 147, and that goes up $27,000. And it shows the average tax on the homestead going up by $77. So your point, although we are lowering the tax rate, John Doe, if he has this average homestead, is still going to see his taxes go up.
Yeah, and at what point, and the reason I say this is we hashed it for years and years on the school bill. At some point, our tax rate will get so low that state will come in and say, hey, y'all's tax rate's too low.
That's a school district issue. It
Yeah,
doesn't
it's not a
apply to the
county.
county. No,
Does it not?
no. The problem, I mean, it's truth in taxation is a real minefield. I mean, we have a windfall event. It would be nice at one level to drop that whole windfall into a tax deduction, not spend any of it. Take a massive reduction in property taxes, but we'd have to bounce it back the next year when the windfall went away to be able to continue to operate the county. But you can't do that because you can't raise your rate from one year to the next by more than the 3.5%.
Doesn't that change every year? 1 year evaluations up, tax rates down, next year tax rates up, valuations up, or down.
I don't know.
It does school wise, but that's what I'm asking about county.
I've looked back over the last 4 or 5 years here at the county level. And when I started looking at county finance, we were charging 0.79999 something. And now it's proposed to 0.60. So we've come down. Yeah, valuations have gone up. Wind farms have come in, which is valuation, and the rates come down 16 cents.
So valuations could fall down next year, rates could go up. Is that-
You know, I don't know that the only where we have the risk of the valuations coming down is in the depreciation schedules on the wind farms. That is buffered by the way this court did the last 2 wind farms, where we have the fixed pilot payments that commence in January of next year. That these properties are going to go off the tax rolls. We're going to get ballpark $750,000+ of payment in lieu of taxes. It's not going to be collected through taxes. So we won't have to have that in the tax rate, but we will have the money for 10 years in the county budget. So technically, you're right. I don't think we have a financial risk this time.
And the way I understand what Shelley was telling me, the school board is the old way, school board, I don't know about Pudding. And Mullen, but they're like 22 cents going down this year. And their rates. But the evaluations go way up.
But they will, and that's the reason I asked that on the school. We were at 90 cents and all of a sudden the state comes in and says in 5 years, you have to be at $1.18. Okay, we had to prorate it for 5 years. You had the option of going to the dollar. But we did, we went up a fifth a year.
And that also went
And
and stayed
because
from the appraisal district, their evaluations were too low.
Yes. And then you get your tax rate up to $1.18 and your evaluations are too low. Well, Pretty's more like at $1.04 again now. But their evaluations are just like the counties. I mean, we're up 40 million and that's not counting 39 million. That's not counting the wind turbine or the new wind turbine.
Yeah. That 49 million is a little bit of I don't agree with that number, because if you look at there are 2 lines in here that's new property added to the tax rolls. And if you back out the wind farm, it's about $7 million of new construction in the county. So that's the new stuff. You saw almost $6 million going off the tax rolls because of ag exemption and disability claims. And so net, I mean, yeah, you're right. That number you're talking about, Commissioner Parkman's on those tables, but I can't figure it out. And when I try and get an explanation, it's well, that's the way the forms work.
Well, I guess the sad thing is for the taxpayers, even though it looks like we're doing everything we can, their taxes are still getting higher.
Well, they are. And if you look at set on that $77, so that's, what is that, 8% maybe of the tax on the average homestead? Well, look at the raises we're giving county employees, look at the cost of fuel. We're not doing anything really more. Yeah, it costs more. Ms. Campbell, is there anything you would like to add? Mr. Johnson, do you have a view you would like to express?
You're all doing a good job.
I make a motion that we approve the proposed tax rate for 2022.
I'll second that motion. Mr. Hale, I didn't call on you. Is there anything you would like to add?
Well, I just maybe an overview. I mean, we've all been through this process every year. It seems like it never ends. We stop and we got to start all over again. But everything is time sensitive. The appraisal district has to send out the appraisal notices. You've got a deadline. If you don't like your appraisal, you have to protest. It's a short string. You can't work it out with the appraisal district. You can file suit in district court. Again, it's a short timeline. And the reason for that is the appraisal district, when the smoke clears from all of that, the appraisal district can certify an tax roll, which is when the appraisal district then gets what the total property on the tax roll is going to be. And the reason that's only short string is because until they do that, the various taxing entities, in our case, the county and the school, can't develop their budget because they don't know what the tax base is going to be. And so you run along there and look at those numbers, and then you have to adjust your budget accordingly. And then we get to this point, and there has to be a proposed rate before we have the public meeting, because the public needs to know what the commissioners board is about to do to them, so they can come in and complain. And so you've got, I mean, I'm telling you,
He said they complained twice.
real language how all this process works. So that's why you have to have a proposed rate. That rate will change. You can have your public meeting and everybody comes in here, you decide if you don't like it, you can adjust it or whatever. I mean, that normally doesn't happen, but legally you can. Before you actually have a vote on final rate, which is what you do at the end, when you finally set everything. And base your budget on that. I understand what the judge is saying, we have a drastic increase in taxable property this year on the tax roll. That's not a permanent situation. It's going to change. And if you say, well, it's costing everybody more tax money this year, let's reduce the rate. Well, yeah, okay, but then if you got to bump it back up by 4% next year because of that, then you got a real problem. Because you can't do it without submitting it to the voters and having an election.
And then there's your timeline. Yeah, there's a
So if
time.
that doesn't pass, then you're broke for the next year. So you got to look ahead. You got to frame the situation right now with this rapid increase in tax rate. I mean, in tax base. So I don't see any way around it for what you do. But anyway, that's, I mean, you got to have been on here for a while. I'm not telling you when you know. And like I said, it seems like we just picked up 1 year, we got started when we were in the same year. But that's why everything's now sensitive.
It's interesting. I did look into what happens if you do not approve a tax rate. And if we did approve a tax rate, this was meant by the legislators to be punitive, but what it turns out is really punitive to the taxpayers is you have to use last year's tax rate.
It gives you more money than what we're.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what more money than what we're asking for?
Sure. Have you ever seen a tax increase voted on in Mills County that passed?
I don't know that I've ever actually seen, have we ever have it?
That's what I was just going to ask.
One time.
I don't know.
We did years ago, we tried to pass a 0.5% sales tax.
Oh, yeah. Say that.
But the county did approve the jail bonds and there was a tax associated with that. I don't know if that was explained, but that was a tax.
It was a
I
tax.
mean, that's about a nickel of our taxes goes to those jail bonds.
I don't ever recall the county bumping up the tax rate so much that it had to go to the voters for referendum. Maybe it has that.
Well, that
Because we were
law's only
always at
gonna
the,
affect
you know,
3
there's a
years.
ceiling. You know, for
Yeah.
counties, we can't go above 8.80.
Oh, you can go 0.80, you can 3.5.
Yeah, see, that's a change. The truth in taxation was in 2018 or 19.
Yeah.
That set to 3.5. I believe before that, there was the cap of 0.8.
I wouldn't count on the voters voting. And that's it.
So
Well,
But before that, we were always at the cap. When
Yes.
I got on the commissioner's court, we were already at that top. You couldn't go any higher. So if you even wanted it.
basically what we're doing, saving
Mhm.
Jess Johnson a bunch of heartache next year.
No, every year's got heartache at some point. Yeah.
Just depends on what it is.
Yeah. So anyway, you go back to Robert's Rules of Order. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just for refreshing, the motion was to approve a proposed tax rate of 0.6061. And then hearing no discussion, I'd call for a vote. This has to get recorded, who votes for and who votes against in the advertisement. So everyone for the motion to approve a proposed tax rate of 0.6061, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Did you vote, Mike? Okay, so we have 5 ayes. Okay. Now we're down to commissioners' reports and requests. Commissioner Wright?
We've been cutting on brush, patchwork, picking up trash and haul material. We're in the process of working on my precinct barn after the storm damage. And I'm gonna be off for a couple of days. I got a lot of demonstrators. That's all I have.
Commissioner Guerin?
We're cutting brush right now, and I've got one road hand out with COVID.
Yes, department.
Yeah.
It's all.
We used our state base from Mike last week and got it put out on the road, on County Road 189. Trying to start getting things together this morning with the belly dumps. To haul 100+ loads down on 549. So, gonna change the tires out on the front of the tractor for us.
Our shared truck. I just put 2 on the back.
Maybe. But anyway, just trying to get that going because at the end of this month, I'll be down to one hand for a knee surgery, so trying to get some things rounded up. Not my knee surgery, a hand's knee surgery. And he's supposed to be out for probably 6 weeks.
How are you gonna get this road tier removed?
That's what we're trying to do now. So when it comes to the jail pad, until we get 100+ loads of dirt, and don't call me.
Yeah, but we're gonna need the belly dump. My belly dump in. What's the
Kind of caught
status?
between a rock and a hard spot.
What's the status of the truck?
Talked to him last week. Now the guy with the truck shop's on vacation. So he's supposed to, he may have called, he's supposed to call me this morning. But now we're getting to the point I really ain't got that thing to go get it.
Well, as long as he's taken, he should deliver it.
And if he delivers it and we don't like it,
Yeah,
you know, so.
you're right.
We'll make it work, but the main thing is we need to give ourselves at least 4 working weeks to get that 2 mile road.
Commissioner Williams,
I've been working on County Road 550, I'm finishing that up the next day or so, and then we'll move over and be working on 508, 527, 529, 530, right in there, that will go real shortly. So all this, hopefully this week and next week, and then probably trying to get it lined out, what we're gonna do for logistic purposes on the jail. With Jed and I are looking at it and stuff like that, so. We've already visited with one fence builder and, he's good to go, but he's kind of got a window of only getting in 2 weeks.
well, yeah, if we're changing the configuration, then,
Yeah,
yeah,
but his window is what I'm saying, and
Right.
his job and his business is in about 2 weeks. So we have to, if we're gonna move that fence, he's gotta know in 2 weeks.
or we have to use
Or
a
we have to
different.
find a different
fund.
fence.
Okay, anything else? Okay, judges report. Mills County Historic Commission's received a Distinguished Service Award for last year from the State Historic Commission. It'll be presented to them in their meeting tomorrow at 9:30. If anybody wants to come, we'll send a photo to the Eagle. Next week, we'll continue to go over the budget and that's all I've got. Well, if anybody's looking for the judge's report on the radio, KRNR moved from 100.5 to 92.7. Sunday or this morning, it's gone. It's not on 105 anymore. So that's where the judge's report is aired, as well as the city managers. And that's all I have. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion from Commissioner Williams, second from Commissioner Guerin, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.